right now, just, if you don't mind, before we do the bracha, just take a moment to pray. Father, I just want to thank you for this privilege, Lord, to be able to stand here, Lord Father, and read from your word. May you always remind us, Lord Father, that when we open up this collection of books, Lord Father, that these are the very words that came from your mouth. Father, I pray that they would penetrate every hard heart, that they, through these words, Lord Father, would be set free. Father, I pray that you would have a meeting with us today. Now, every person on this property, Lord Father, every person reiterating, whether they're teaching the smallest of us to hear, Lord Father, I pray that you would anoint every teacher. I pray that you would flow through us. I pray that you would anoint every person in this room. That your Ruach, Lord Father, would just continue to build, continue to lift up, continue to pull down whatever needs to happen, Lord Father, so that you would get us to where we need to be. Father, I thank you again as we open up your word, that we have this privilege of calling you our God through Yeshua HaMashiach, Father. That through his blood you set us free. And that through your Ruach, Lord Father, we may correctly understand and continue to have this word written on our hearts, so that we may change, Father, each and every day. So Father, as I read this bracha, I just want to thank you again. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan Torah. Amen. Amen. Blessed are you, Lord God, King of the universe, who gives the Torah of truth and the good news of salvation to his people Israel and to all the peoples through his Son Yeshua the Messiah, Lord. Amen. Amen. All right. So, in 1 John, remember dealing with all the fun issues that we have been dealing with. We got extremely far last week. Dealing with the idea of what it means to abide in God. And as we abide in him, what should that help us do? Not just walk. What are we talking about in context? Those who abide in him do not sin. Right. So he was making the context of this is what we have to deal with. If we continue to abide in him, and we spoke about this Greek, which is a continuation sort of word, that the same one that they use in John 3:16 when he says, if you believe, if you continue in believing that Yeshua is the Messiah. And it is a continuation of our faith as we continue to push in daily. If you abide in him, you will not sin. How is that even possible? This is the interactive part. Right? By his Ruach. And what's that Ruach going to do to us or for us? Change our hearts and change our minds so that we won't want to sin. Right? It was a massive realization for me. I shared this with a couple of the youth I was talking to on Thursday. It was a massive realization for me when I realized every time I sinned, I hurt God. Every time I made the mistake, his heart broke. Every time I chose something else other than him, he was the one with tears in his eyes. And it transformed the way I saw sin. This wasn't just about me getting my way, it's what happens when I get my way. I hurt him. I break him. And he sits and he looks at me and he goes, "My child, why?" You see, sin is self-destructive. And he looks at you and he goes, "Why do you hate yourself so much that you continue to choose this?" for the most part, if you put down your choices and your motives, you would not say it's about hate of self, but because you want to get what you want. From God's perspective, if I give you that, if you do that, you destroy you. And that's what he needs to change. That's what he's fighting to change. Okay? I feel like we should just talk about this for a little bit. What does it mean when Torah is written on my heart? Does it mean I don't need to remember it anymore because it's now all of a sudden implanted here? Okay, that means I shema. I hear and obey, and I love him enough to be able to want to do it his way. Have you ever loved someone enough to make them coffee the way they like it instead of the way you like it? Seems ridiculous, right? You love them enough to know that it's 2 sugars of milk or no sugar, no milk. Doesn't matter. It's not what I like, it's what they like. And because I'm doing it for them, my motive is to please them. You see, when you love God, your motive is not self, your motive is him. How we forget that sometimes when we look at our marriages and we look at our children. We don't love them the way he loves us, because our motives are about us and not about him. And I have to ask the question, what's best for my son from God's viewpoint? I have to ask the question, what's best for my wife from God's viewpoint? I have to ask the question, where am I and how am I able to better build, and by obeying, by staying in him, by staying with him, I build his kingdom. When I do it my way, I break it down. How do I do that? By tearing yourself down. By tearing other people down. By ripping everything that he's fighting for to a shred of nothing until God and them cannot reconcile. How many of you have dealt with people that cannot reconcile the love of a father and God? Where do you think that destruction came from? Yeah, normally through the earthly father or someone that I recognized, and Hasatan broke that person so that my disconnect came from what I saw in my dad. Why do you think the enemy is so busy trying to rip apart homes? Because I won't see God in any of this. I don't understand love the way he sees love, because I've never seen that type of love. I've never seen that type of fight for me. I've seen lots of fighting with me. You know, it's very seldom we fight for the people, but we fight with them a lot, right? What's the difference? How do I fight for someone instead of fighting with them? Alright, try and build them. Who's the builder? God. Right, so I go to him. If my wife is having a horrible time and I can't fix it, where should I go? I should go to Abba and say, she's having a horrible time, can you fix it? If I see my son is not coping, instead of maybe adjusting his attitude, maybe I should ask God to adjust his heart condition. And when my community is not functioning accordingly, who do I go to? Because you can stand up and you can talk until you're blue in the face, until God changes the mind and changes the heart, nothing happens. So, instead of fighting with, instead of directing my frustration at, why don't I submit to the fact that I cannot fix him and I have to go to God and I have to say, change that heart. And in that, when I change the mind, renewing one's mind, what does that mean? How many of you guys have had a really random, not so nice, unkosher thought pop into your head this week? You don't have to tell me what it was, you just have to say yes or no. And remember, those who do not sin are not bound to God. Eh? You're bunch of liars. Don't come and pretend like you've not had an attack from Satan this week. This thing pops into your head and you start to justify, or you dwell a second longer than what you're doing. Well, how do we combat that?
Take it captive.
Right, I take every thought captive. How do I take it captive? I feel like I need a practical example. Give me a teenager. Jordy, come here, bro. You know you're gonna. Come here. Don't worry about it. Come here. Come here.
Pray for me.
I do this out of love.
Not loud.
This is Jordan, and he's got a problem.
If
If you forget his name, it's written on the side of his shirt. So right, if Jordan was standing here, how would Jordan take me captive? While I'm sleeping. That's so yeah. How would he? Jordan, how would you take someone captive? Think about it, just logically.
Don't ask me questions.
Would this be a good start?
Yes.
Yes.
Holding on to it, right? So that it cannot run amok all over. Use some sort of method to grab it and hold it really close, and then we say, come, we're going to go for a walk outside, or into a nice padded cell where you belong. And I will walk him nicely to his space. Thank you, sir. So when I take... Where's the little tents? I can't understand.
You forgot to mention pressure points.
Let's not get into the physical side of this. I'm giving you pictures. Alright? And we get into this place where we hold on to something that comes at an attack, and how often do I grab it and I say, that's not of God? And how often do I come and how do I bind that thought? Don't get all airy-fairy on me. I'm not talking about I bind you in the walking. That's not biblical. I bring truth into the matter, as Yeshua did. You say this, I say this. And all of a sudden, my focus is not on the thought, but my focus in my God and what He thinks about that idea. And I go, I don't want any part of that. And I slowly start to distance my thinking from the things that used to tie me up, to create space. So that it's no longer my thinking, but the enemy's, and I get to the space where my thinking becomes more like his thinking. Fear. Am I good enough? Am I worth it? Does anybody even care? Will we have enough? Does he even answer me? Are we ever going to get this right? My number one favorite. If God really knew what type of person you were. Sound familiar? How do I combat that? It is written. It is written. Who is my protector? He said He'd never leave me nor forsake me. Who is my provider? The one that can bring bread from heaven. I don't have to worry about bread. Am I good enough? Before I even knew He existed, Yeshua died for me. I must be worth something to Him. If He died to get me. If no one else loves you, if no one in this world has ever loved you, you remember one thing for me. Yeshua died to have you. This creation was never complete until you started coming into this world. The world needs one of you. And as I add those ones and those ones, those brick upon brick that I'm going to take, I'm going to mold, and I'm going to build my kingdom out of, when my house is done, then He'll come and fetch. You are those living stones. You have a purpose. You have a function. And as much as the world will look at you and tell you, oh please. Is this my reality? Is my mindset kingdom mindset? Am I going to be focusing on God and what He says about me more than what the enemy says about me? You're going to have to overcome these things. Man, the same sort of theme. I don't know, this week has just been one of these weeks. Baruch Hashem for these weeks. Because it's a central theme, and I'm sure if a few people have been struggling with this over the last couple of weeks, I'm sure a lot of you have been. So, you forgive me if I've used this illustration with you already this week, okay? When I put water into this cup, what shape does it take? Shape of the cup. When I pour water from a hosepipe into the pool, what shape does the water come out? Shape of the hosepipe. Until it starts to fill up in the pool, and then what shape does it take? Shape of the pool. God told Reuben in Genesis 49 that he's as unstable as water. And we all know that water is powerful. If you've ever played in the ocean, your bum has been handed to you once or twice, I'm sure. I'm just going to run into this, bah! And you're going to land up on the beach. And then you think twice the next time you do it. Normally happens when you're about yay high. If you're like Nick, every time you go into the ocean.
Can't drink the waves.
But you go through this process and you realize, and we realize, how strong this water is. But God was not saying Reuben lacked strength. Reuben lacked a mold. He lacked structure. You see, because he took the shape of what everybody else was telling him he should be. You've got to do it this way, you've got to do it this way, you've got to do it this way. We start to see this in King Saul's life as well. More concerned about the people than he is about what God thinks about him. And eventually, you start to act the way they want you to act. You start to think the way they want you to think, and you start walking out the way they want you to walk it out. How many of you have lived that life for a while? How fulfilled did you feel? I feel empty, I feel broken, and I feel useless. Because you were never meant to take that mold. God loved you so much that He created the mold that is unique for you. And when you operate in that mold, you find peace and you find purpose. As a side note, you find His heart and you find love. Because you finally figured out that someone loved you enough to shape you, to form you, and to get you to where you were always meant to be. Not where you thought you should be. This is love. And when we abide in Him, and we quit doing it our own way, things start to change. And we start to let go of things that have been hurting us. We start to question our motives about things, and we realize it's more about self than it is about God. And then we start to fight for the things that are of Him and not of us. If you haven't gotten there yet, do yourself a favor and just go home later and take some stock. If you're in a difficult position, God is in the midst of the trial to show you a heart condition. Yours versus His. If He had to open you up and take all those hidden thoughts, all those hidden fears, and lay them out on the table in front of you, And then if you took everything he said about you, what would your stories be like? Would we see two completely stark, different contrasts? Or would we start to see some sort of merging? To be of one mind with God, to be of one heartbeat with Him, for us as a community to think the way He thinks, move when He moves, love how He loves. Discipleship is a process of us being molded to become like Him, not Him becoming like us. Thank you, Abba. If you continue to abide, if you continue to dwell, not when it's convenient, not when it's necessary, because your version of necessary and someone else's version are two very different. Let me let you in on a little secret. If you haven't figured this out yet, staying with God all the time is always necessary. And sometimes we just get to the place where we become too busy to realize it. We become too fearful to think about it. We become too confused and we're too hurt. And when your bum is on the floor and you're broken and you're hurting, guys, open heart surgery is a very painful procedure. You've all experienced a lot. I know a lot of your stories. You know some of mine. And you've been kicked around, let down, let go, told you're useless, forgotten, been lied to a lot of the time from those nearest and dearest to you. And you've got a lot of hurts and you've got a lot of things that are holding you back. God is trying to cut those cords so you can be free. But it takes time, and it hurts, and it's difficult, because you've probably suppressed so much of that stuff you don't even want to remember it again. The problem is, every time you get in a similar situation, it comes up anyway. When He starts to transform our hearts and transforms our minds, we start to let go of all that broken and let Him breathe new life in us so He can put together all the brokenness that was there. How many of you have had that one aspect, of just one section of your life where you've overcome one thing? How many of you have had that? Was it a lot better? And the more you go through it, the more you realize and you go, oh snap, I found another one. How about that one's gross? Can you take that one out? Fix that one. Like you did all the other 17 things. I need you to fix this one. There's a hook there. I didn't even realize how much it was hurting until you pointed it out. And the more you trust Him to deal with it, the more you're able to grab hold of Him. And the more you're able to grab hold of Him, the more He's able to work. So if we take our definition of fighting for somebody, how often do you guys fight for yourselves? It's easy to pray for other people, but never easy to pray for you, right? Unless you're busy complaining. That's generally how it goes. I'm not really happy the way you're running the universe right now. My bank balance is a little low. Because we want Him to do it our way instead of the way He's going to. He says, no, I knew the bank balance was going to be low. This is a wilderness moment. Let me fix you. Because maybe you focus more on my love equaling bank balance than my love equaling you. It's a wonderful thing when you become, let me not say it like I've arrived. There's a wonderful thing when you start to become spiritually mature. Is that when you know you're broken, you can go to someone and you can say, oh snap, that's ugly and I need you to fix that right now because I don't like what that looks like in me. That was one of the most freeing lessons I've ever learned in my life. The underlying thing is, I can't fix me, God has to. The really cool thing is, He wants to. Don't ask me why. And he looks at long, hard look, and he says, you really want me to get rid of that? And until you say with everything in your heart, yes, I need you to get rid of this thing that's holding me back from you. Not the way I feel or what I feel like or being tired or grumpy or fearful all the time. Those things, the essence of it all is it keeps you away from God. And if you can change that, that means I can be closer to you. Reminds me of that lady with the hemorrhage, right? And she reached out and grabbed Yeshua's tzitzit, knowing what that tzitzit represented. She could have carried on living her life. Yes, it would have been uncomfortable, it would not have been nice, but the problem is the number one thing she was never allowed to do was go into temple. Some of us go our whole entire lives with not caring about going up to God and sitting at His feet and saying, hi, you created me, I'm here. You never cared less, but this woman's heart broke and she spent her entire fortune to try and get rid of this. And when she finally cried out to God in flesh and she grabbed hold of these little strings that represented Him and His kingdom, she wanted restoration. Father, fix me so I can be with you. How often is that our heart's cry? Not fix them because they suck. Yo, we are so busy pointing at other people, we forget to look at ourselves. Yeshua wasn't wrong when He said you've got a log in your eye, but you want to tell them how bad they're doing right now. I'm surprised you can see. You see, there's this wonderful verse that we're going to discuss in Matthew eventually on a Wednesday. It's not that far away, but you know how this goes. It talks about being perfect, for He is perfect. What am I aiming at? I'm aiming at Him. I'm not aiming at him or him or her. You see, my focus is on attaining perfection. And I know that only comes through the Holy Spirit. I know that will only happen at the end of everything when God fixes everything. But I'm still aiming to become like Him. If I'm aiming for God, it gives me less time to look at the people around me and tell them how awesome I am compared to you or how I suck compared to Him. Half the problem is we're looking at everybody else and pointing spanners at them when you yourself will not even look inside for God to deal with you. And if you're not even aiming at something, if you're just aiming to live, you're falling short. In your livelihood, you will miss life. All of this stuff sits in the middle of this little hamper called dwell with me. With Him in me. And anything that's creating separation from that oneness that we want needs to be let go. And He says, if you continue to do this, it's a process. Can we say Baruch Hashem for the process? Because if you try to pull it all at once, I don't think we'd be able to get up again. When He tugs at one string and it hurts and it's painful and He deals with all the rest of it, and then later He's supposed to do that again, so yeah, just take out this one thing, but that one thing has got 50 barbs attached around the back that you don't see. you're saying, help me love, I'm going to have to deal with your heart condition, I'm going to have to deal with your stubbornness, I'm going to have to deal with your family, I'm going to have to deal with your brother who said that thing, I'm going to have to deal with your sister who told you you suck, I'm going to have to deal with your mother who said that mean thing to you, I'm going to have to deal with your father who never loved you the way he should because his father never loved him, and then I'm going to have to deal with your neighbor who was just having a bad day who told you you can't have any sweeties that day. But we take all of that and we wrap it all up in one. And we use that as our get out of jail free card when God doesn't love us, you see, because I've got a whole string of experiences that tell me. One Bob, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we say, no, Abba, it's too painful. I'm good. He said, but if I don't get this out, it's going to fester and it's going to mess you up. How many of you are part of that, I say this with love, that stubborn generation with unless you're having a heart attack, it's the only time you'll ever see me in the hospital? Ever know someone like that? I love my mom too, but she's like that. She had 2 heart attacks while I was in Israel. She told the doctor, I'm sitting up and you've got 3 days. 3 days I'm out. He said, oh, my rest was 6 months, but by day 5 she was back at work. No, hard lady. And the only time you get her to go see a doctor is when he has to hold her hostage. You will not get your medicine until you come and see me. You know, sometimes we do that. We do that with God. We only really want to talk to Him when we've got something to tell Him about how you're not happy about stuff, or only when we really need to be there. It's not the relationship that He wants. That's not living together. Everyone happy? Nice pep talk? Jolly good. Shall we start with the verse? I give up with these videos. We try and label them every time and we never ever do what we're supposed to do. Abba's got a sense of humor. Alright, let's go from verse 10, shall we? Here is how one can distinguish clearly between God's children and those of the adversary. Everyone who does not continue doing what is right is not from God. The translation carries this out, this translation carries it out. If you don't continue doing what you know is right. Likewise, anyone who fails to keep loving his brother is not from God. Let me remind you that these people were going to their death, not giving up their brother's place, because they knew they were Christians and they were going to die. Tell us where they are and you will live. I will show you love the way Yeshua showed them love. I will give up my life so you can have life. God forbid, chas v'chalila, that we are ever in that situation, but this is the reality of where John is. For this is the message which you have heard from the beginning, that we should love each other. Let me just pause there. Yeshua said, you will distinguish my disciples from the rest of everyone else's disciples. How? That you love one another. You know, there's a Messianic rabbi, Rabbi Greg. He's kind of a hard boyki. You know, he came from the Bronx. He says it a little bit more roughly than I'm going to say it right now. But he says, I don't care if you don't like each other. If you belong to this house, you will love one another. You know, I had a good giggle. He says, Yoach's not a fight, right? He was talking to his congregation, but he says, some of you just take it to another level. You do it professionally or something. You're sponsored. Because you look for fault with everything and everyone else. Listen to me, that's not love. That's you justifying why you should go hide in your corner. Separation equals sitting dark. Sitting dark equals Hasatan, smiling. Sheep cling together, they stay near their shepherd. Wolves separate. Think about We should love each other and not be like Cain. You know, it's a little bit of a... So if you don't love someone, what are you like? Cain. And Cain was who again? Cain did what? Killed his brother. So if you don't love, you're the offshoot of Cain. Who, by the way, carry on reading, who was from the evil one and murdered his own brother. Now let's just go back quickly to where Yeshua said something about if you hate your brother.
Same as murder.
Right. So just take a second, and I don't want to beat you up too much about that. Is how many times that we have hate in our hearts instead of love for them? How many times have we given them kindness when they've persecuted? How many times have I thought like Yeshua that even though they're busy crucifying me, in whatever way, shape and form that was, he says, forgive them, Father, they know not what they do. Or do we act like the immature disciple who says, bring down the lightning and send out the bears and nuclear bomb at this address, please, Lord, and I'll be smiling when you're finished. It's funny, when you were doing the same thing to other people, God didn't send the bears and the lightning. You don't need to think long and hard in your past of what type of person you used to be. Heck, for some of us, this is so new that we don't even have to think about it a month ago or 2 months ago. When do we let the love overrule? Distraction, eh? Why did he murder him? Because his own actions were evil and his brothers were righteous. Don't be amazed, brothers, if the world hates you. We, for our part, know that we have passed from death to life because we keep loving the brothers. How do you pass from death to life? Love. Loving self? No. Loving your community? Yes. The person who fails to keep on loving is still under the power of death. You know, when I read that, I think of Peter. When Peter, you know, after being a part-time disciple, you know, God had to call him 3 times to come and follow him. And I think, you know, he calls him, and you know, between the second and third call happens the denial. He says, even unto death I will be with you. Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Not going to happen. Do you know him? He denies him 3 times and he breaks, and he realizes that his heart condition and his mind are 2 completely different places. And afterwards Yeshua resurrects and he's sitting on the shoreline and they're busy fishing. And then he asks him the question, do you love me? But it's a nice play in the Greek. He says, do you love me like a brother? Well, Yeshua asks him, do you love me with a divine love? Do you agape me? Peter's answer, I love you like a brother. Brotherly love is, when you're doing right by me, we're good. Divine love is, even when you're persecuting me, I will pray for you. And Yeshua asks him a second time, because with Peter, you've got to do everything 3 times. Do you love me with a divine love? And he says, I love you like a brother. And Yeshua looks at him and goes, do you love me like a brother? Of course I love you like a brother. Tells you 2 things. Peter didn't understand the heart of his God just yet. And he didn't understand how to love divinely. Pouring out of the Holy Spirit in Acts 2, Peter starts shouting out to his brethren, to his community. And he said, you killed the Messiah, but don't worry, he came to die for you. There's life. There's a chance to make right. All you have to do is choose. And for the first time, he was not afraid to lose his life. He was more afraid, let's say it this way, for them to lose eternity. That's the divide. The person who fails to keep on loving is still under the power of death. Everyone who hates his brother is a murderer, and know that the murderer has eternal, that no murderer has eternal life in him. The way that we have come to know love, through his having laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. If someone has worldly possessions and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how can he be loving God? I spoke to you guys a bit about this in the first session, right? To give is to give to God, not to man. I don't care which ministry you support, no matter who you think you're helping, you are giving to God. It says in Scripture, God loves a cheerful giver. If you look at someone and you know they don't have food, and you're just saying, love you, man, and they go home and cry because no one's put food on their table today. Brings me to the next question. How difficult do you think it was in this community for that to go unchecked? If we've given up everything and we meet once a week and we talk and we fellowship and it's all about Christ, and for many cases these guys gave up all of their belongings and made a communal purse. They sold everything they had and they gave it to God. And they said, we are going to spend time together as a family and we're going to study Scripture all day, every day. And through the money that we have, we're going to make sure everybody gets enough food. You have portions in Acts where it talks about certain widows and orphans were being overlooked. Now, if you know of anybody in the room who does not have food, the question is not what is the leadership doing about it, but what are you doing about it? Because the leadership is probably addressing the situation, but you yourself have distanced yourself from your brother. How does he know or she know that you care? And for the person who goes through the difficult thing, do me a favor, this is a hard lesson to learn. But if you refuse help, you are refusing the blessing of letting someone help you. The mitzvah to help gives God glory. So if you stop me from helping you, you're taking away glory from God. There's lots of things that we have to change. This idea of community is foreign to us. Children, let us love not with words and talk, but with actions and in reality. Here is how we will know that we are from the truth and will set our hearts at rest in His presence. How do I know you're a believer? Not by what you say, but by what you do. You know, there's always this funny test, and it sounds kind of mean until you get to know me. You'll tell me something. A prophet told me X, Y, and Z, and then I say things like, we'll see. Now, I'm not trying to discount the word of your life. I'm just trying to test to see if that is an actual prophet. As Scripture tells me to. Oh, I've been a believer for 15 years. We'll see if you're a believer. Because your actions should speak louder than what's coming out your mouth. I don't ask where you are. I watch where you are. If I don't see action, there's something wrong. That's where me as a teacher, anointed by God, to be able to come in and say, listen, there's a heart condition there, and I'm going to ask God to fix that. I'm going to point to Scripture and I say, this is where I see you're at, actually. And it's not me trying to be mean, it's me trying to help you to get to the next level. Well, what's the number one thing everybody loves so much? Constructive criticism.
Yeah.
Tell me what you really think, Vince. I'm like, yeah. They just look at you and he goes, oh, who do you think you are? Sitting over there with your funny little pulpit. Because we want to create distance from everything and everyone, and we don't really want to look at our heart condition, but the simple fact of the matter is God loves you enough to send people to help you check your heart condition. There's a process. If our hearts know something's against us, God is greater than our hearts, and He knows everything. So if we're falling short somewhere, God knows it and He's going to fix us. Dear friends, if our hearts know nothing against us, we have confidence in approaching God. Then whatever we ask for, we receive from Him because we are obeying His commands and doing the things that please Him. Our prayer life somehow gets a lot better and we get quicker answers when we're more in tune with Him. I mean, we shouldn't have to say that, but somewhere we should see this, right? Do we have any other scriptural evidence to try and back it up? Is this lovely little thing, I think it's in Peter. Guys, just check me, Googleize this if anybody's got a phone. It says that if a husband mistreats his wife, even his prayers are blocked.
Peter 3:7.
Thank you. It was Peter somewhere. So if he does not lovingly take care of his wife, his prayers are blocked. That's not a maybe if over spiritualized, that's a statement from God. Anyone knows? Maybe the reason you're not getting your answers, men, is because you're mistreating your spouse. Now, if I'm sitting in a situation and everything about me is on Him, and I'm walking righteously in accordance to His commands, not my own, and I'm walking out love that He promises, I will make sure you have everything you need, because your heart is not about yourself, but your heart is about me. If I'm praying for spiritual gifts and I'm not getting those gifts, maybe because it's about me instead of me building up the community. If I'm praying for a bigger income, maybe it's about building my kingdom instead of building God's. What is my motivation? What's going to change in me? What am I going to set up if I get what I want? Or is it just a nice to have, and then you lie to yourself and you tell yourself it's about comfort? What is the consequence if my heart condition is not right and I get what I ask for? What is it going to do for me? Yeah, it's going to make balagan. This is His command, that we are to trust in the person and power of the Son, Yeshua the Messiah, and to keep loving one another, just as He commanded us. Those who obey His commands remain united with Him, and He with them. Here is how we know that that He remains united with us by the Spirit whom He gave us. Chapter 4, he starts talking about testing every spirit. So your love condition is going to lead you to the Ruach, but don't get confused between any Ruach, any spirit. Make sure that it always leads you back to Abba, and make sure that it's always rooted in what Abba said. Just because you heard a funny voice and it was supernatural doesn't mean that the enemy cannot mimic what God is trying to do. Listen to me, the Egyptians also threw down sticks and they turned to snakes. They also turned water into blood. Is God fighting Himself, or is there someone else trying to get them through their experience, which seems to be contrary to their God, to try and get you so distracted you don't know who is God and who's power in your life. Does God say, go and play and become super spiritualists? No, he says, if you stay in my word and you stay rooted in me, you will know the difference between the world and not. You will know the difference between my voice and the enemy's voice. You will know the difference and my heart condition about what I'm about, so when you see a miracle, know whether it is from God or not. There's a silly thing. When the FBI trains up, or the CIA, or any sort of high-ranking officials train anybody up to do in counterfeiting techniques, okay? They give them, back in the day, a checkbook, and they look at the check, and they leave them with that one check that's the original, and they tell them, you sit and you study this for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours, and you fill the paper, and you look at the print, and you look at the way the color flows, and you look at the edging, and you look at the way it's printed, and you look at for this, 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 and this, and this, and that will tell you whether it's the banks or not. And when they test them, all they have is the knowledge of the original. So anything that doesn't look like that gets tossed. You don't need to know all the schemes of the enemy to know the enemy is going to be different to God. If you know God well enough, just like if I could terrorize Jordan again, if him and I went around the corner and I say, okay, stand up, you can pray now, and he says, stand up, you can pray now, you should realize there's a difference between the voices you're hearing. One of them carries more authority in this situation than the other. How then do I distinguish between my Father's heart and everything else? And that's ultimately going to bring me back full circle to what we spoke about in the beginning. How do I get to know my spouse so well that if someone told me something ridiculous, my wife dyed her hair pink, ridiculous for Tanya, not so ridiculous for other people, and I'll be like, nah. Or someone comes up to her and says, oh no, I saw Vince pulling out the bottle store with 3 bottles of vodka and he was sitting in his car. She should say, nah. Because that's not him. You saw someone that maybe looked like Vince, but it wasn't Vince. And the longer we get to that process, the longer we get to understand our God, the longer we spend time with Him, the longer He will change our thinking, our heart condition, our hearing, and what comes out of our mouth. It will change everything about you. So guys, if I may I end off with something for this week? Do me a favor and check your habits. Check where you spend your time, what you spend your time on, what you're thinking about, what you are allowing in, versus what you're putting in. You know, there was a pastor that used a silly thing, and again, I used this at Palm Grove. If you take an empty glass, or you take a glass and you fill it with water and you throw some sand in, and then you let the sand settle, without moving the glass, how do I get the sand out? Take a bigger source of water and pour it in so it goes in and it scoops and it starts throwing the sand out to the top. Now, if you're pouring more God in, it's going to get the sand out. The chach is going to go. But if you're pouring God in and you take a lump of sand and you throw it in at the same time, how clean is your water? Be careful what you're pouring in. You're either abiding in Him, and that will show in your habits, that will show in your heart condition, or you're throwing in mochach and you cannot understand why you cannot get breakthrough with God. Because you refuse to let Him do anything. You're still busy throwing in what you want in instead of anybody else. Guys, I'm not trying to make light. This is a hard thing He's asking you to do. But let me encourage you, it's worth it. You will not recognize you by the time He's done with you. And if He gives you that change, that container of who you really meant to be in His eyes, and this is your structure, the world will never change that again. Because you understand this is who you're meant to be and what He's going to make you for eternal purposes. He is going to change the way you think. That you're not considering the worldly prospects, you're focusing on the heavenly prospects. And everything you have now is to build a kingdom, not to build myself. Can you imagine what Paul would have done if he had the internet? Can you imagine what Paul would have done if he had his own airplane? That poor man had to walk
13,400 miles.
13,400 miles to go and tell people of God. Why are we struggling even to come down the road to attend a fellowship? You will save money for nice things in your home, but you won't invest in a trip to Israel to hear more about God. You will save up to buy books and DVDs, but you won't buy a study guide to find out more about your God. You will take the time, you will make the time for your gym routines or your TV routines or your Facebook routine, but you won't find time to sit with God. Always make time for breakfast, lunch and supper. Always make time to grab a snack. Always make time to go to the bank to go draw. Always make time to go shopping. But too busy to read a page and find out more about God. Your habits are going to define how much water you're letting in. That's going to get rid of the chach, or you're throwing in more chach than any water. And if you're doing that, my question to you is, do you really want breakthrough? Do you really want to change? The longer you put it off, the worse it gets. Be prayerful. Be consistent. Change your habits. It will set you free. You were not meant to act that way, you were meant to act a different way. Okay? Prayer time is happy time.